Wynford, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good to see you and join you too, Stefan.
Yeah, so we saw each other, met each other at the Genius Network annual event, which
Yeah.
was great, and I ended up joining Genius Network after attending some of that event, and like, wow, this is fantastic! What a great network of people. Um, and I was very impressed by what you were saying about your understanding of the brain and perception and performance, and how that just dovetails so nicely with what I'm focused on, especially with this podcast with the Optimized Geek, in terms of getting a higher performance and getting into a place of super learning
Yeah.
and not being reliant on medications that are unnecessary. So there's a lot for us to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
Before we jump into all that, if you could share for just a minute what brought you to this area of study, because you were in a totally different area of business and making a pile of money, living the good life, so it seemed, but then things shifted for you pretty significantly. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't try and be a disruptive entrepreneur, but it seems like that's what I am without trying. And I've been in a few industries, and for some reason, my relatively uneducated brain sees different things. So I come up with innovative solutions. So yeah, I was having a good time from the outside. Everybody that knew me, they saw all the flash stuff, not flash, but you know what I mean, all the toys, the boats, the planes, the cars, all of that. But what they didn't see was one of my four children, the eldest of my four children, was struggling badly. And of course, she had all the best experts that we could find, and they were saying she's got to live with her problems. Well, finally, she attempted to take her life, and that was a huge wake-up call for me. You know, I'm a driven person. I grab opportunities and I run with them. I'm a researcher, a natural researcher, and as I was driving to the hospital to find out if she was going to live, I made the conscious decision that I would spend the rest of my days finding out what gave her her issues and to help her. I mean, my initial thought was just her. That's all I was thinking about, to find out why it was that she was struggling. When I got to the hospital, they were saving her life, and she's happy today. And I'm thrilled. So my life mission has been completely changed. I got rid of my businesses. Apart from one, I still own a private school in England, which is very thrilling. I got rid of all of my other businesses to focus totally on originally Susie's brains, but now the brains of everybody, because there's just so much potential that has never reached the man in the street like you and me. It's never reached us, and there's so much potential in the brain. It's not reaching anybody. It's not reaching the education system yet. It's not reaching the health system yet, but it's accessible to everybody. So I've spent 19 years now doing research on tens of thousands of people to find safe ways of helping them find that potential. So it was for my daughter. Now it's the bit I can do to help mankind. So it's really thrilling stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've really discovered some incredible things in this process, and made some breakthroughs and helped a lot of people. And like, how can we share a little bit with our listeners? I mean, we only have an hour here, but I want to make sure that we give them some things that they can apply to their lives, as well as if they have children, because it's a different ball game. If you're a parent, you've got kids, and they're struggling in school, or they've been labeled as ADD or ADHD or dyslexic, or as badly behaved, or anxious, or whatever. So there are issues that are different if you're a parent versus if you're just an adult trying to perform and live a fulfilled, happy life.
Well, look, you've touched on what is really close to my heart. All those families out there that have got a child they're struggling with, they lose sleep. I lost sleep. I know what it's like. You feel hopeless as a parent. having a child that's struggling with some issue. Many are labeled, many are not labeled. The labeling process needs completely scrapping and starting again, because it's not based on the science we now know about what causes these children to struggle. So my heart pours out to those families that have got autism or ADHD or just reading issues or unable to make friends or physically clumsy. There's all sorts of incomplete skills in the brain, and the assumption we all make is there's something wrong with their brain. Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it is something that's happening in the brain, but no, it's not a problem. It's not a disease. It's something that we can naturally do something about and resolve. And that's the great news. And this is going to reach people in 20, 40, 60 years time, but families can't wait. So, I'm actually a board member of the Reach Institute in New York, which is led by a famous professor who used to be head of research at the Mayo Clinic. He was a professor at Columbia. He was head of child psychiatry at the National Institute of Mental Health. So he invited me to become a board member there because he wanted what I knew and what I was doing to come to this arena, because so many incredible things are out there that are taking a generation or two or three before they reach the people that need them. So the people behind what I'm doing, the researchers, the neuroscientists, are awesome. And what they've done, Stefan, is make these incredible pieces of jigsaw of science. And for some reason, until I came along, nobody had pieced them together to say, this is why these children are struggling. This is the part of the brain where the problems lie. This is what you can do to stimulate that part of the brain in a natural way. And this is the end result. So all those four pieces were there, but nobody put them into a jigsaw. So what I'm presenting, I can't take credit for, apart from being a good jigsaw maker. I am not the one that did the original research. That largely came out of places like Harvard Medical School. A professor there by the name of Jeremy Schmarman. If anybody's interested in the brain, read it, follow his stuff, look at his videos, because this guy is a generation or two ahead of most neuroscientists. And he was the inspiration for me, and his work, together with a professor from England called Nicholson, to them I owe my daughter's life today.
So what would be a book or some sort of paper that would be a good starting point if you're interested in that particular researcher at Harvard? Well,
if you search him and his work on the cerebellum, it's amazing. If you want, I can send you a link afterwards to a wonderful video. If any of your followers would be fascinated, they will see this stuff as mind-blowing, literally, because he opens up exactly how the brain works. And in particular, there's a section of the brain here at the back called the cerebellum. That's where I focused all my attention on. It's the link between brain and body. It's the brain-body connection, but it's like an electrician, and it hardwires the brain. People always tell us we only use a part of the brain, and that's partly true, but the potential of the brain is enormous. So to that extent, it's absolutely true. The more the electrician wires up connections between the brain, the more we are capable of, the more automatic all of our cognitive functions become, and the more calm we are. The better we are at performance, the better we are at learning, at recalling, at coordinating information, at making decisions, at remembering things, thinking things through, being innovative, and having peace on top of all of that. So that's the consequence of developing the cerebellum. Now that sounds a bit grand, but it's actually doable. In fact, babies are developing the cerebellum all the time, but it's kind of in a randomized way. And at the end of it, parts of the cerebellum are highly developed, and we are skilled at those things, and we're naturals at those things. And parts that develop don't get developed. So, my part of my cerebellum that wasn't developed was my dancing skills, for instance, which doesn't really matter. It just means when we go to the odd family wedding, I generally keep out of the way. But if it's a skill like eye tracking, which makes reading impossible, or auditory processing, which makes listening and retention very difficult, then these are very important parts of the cerebellum that are missed out. And there's a farm right next door to where I am now, and last spring I went to watch the lambs being born, and one lamb I watched particularly, it was very cute, and within a minute of being born it was standing up. It was then trying to feed. The next day I saw it, the same lamb in the field, it was jumping, it was skipping, because it's got a cerebellum that's fully developed. So animals have got a real advantage over us humans. We've got a much more complex brain. Our cerebellum takes 2 years to get to where a lamb's cerebellum is when it's born. So this brain-body connection in humans is very underdeveloped, and babies naturally develop it. Well, it's a bit hit and miss, and the process I've gone through is to find ways of naturally continuing the development of the cerebellum. So more and more of the brain gets wired up, more things become automatic and effortless and natural and precise. So whether it's learning skills, whether it's negotiation skills, communication skills, or whether it's sporting skills, whatever it is, the brain just acts faster and better. So that was a quick summary of some of the research behind this, and I hope it tempts people, because this really is life-changing. To kids who've got autism or dyslexia, whether or not they're labeled, it's life-changing. To people who are struggling with depression or moods or memory failing in old age, this is life-changing. If you're an athlete that wants to get a league up, this is likely to do it for you. It's certainly better than anything else on the planet.
Wow. And so what's the process to develop your cerebellum if it didn't fully develop when you were an infant or early toddler?
Well, first of all, we've all got potential. The researchers are telling us that on average 1 in 6 of our everyday skills don't get fully developed. That gives us character. It means we're good and natural at some things, and we're not so good and not so natural at others. So whether it's sporting skills, movement skills, cognitive skills, whatever it is, they're all different types of skill. And so the process for us is we first of all find out where the potential is. That's another thing that we're often told, and our kids are often told, oh, they've got loads of potential. Now we know where the potential is, how much potential there is, and exactly what to do to get it. So we start off by, let's find the potential, whether it's a child or an athlete or an executive or someone that's depressed. We're finding where is the potential to develop this brain-body connection. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is correcting it. It's actually a physical exercise program, but not any old physical exercise. It's very specific exercises. What we've worked hard on is to find out how to analyze every brain. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Your brain, Stefan, is very different to mine, and it's very different to everybody in that room where we met with all those genius folk. And did you notice nearly all of them, the leg was shaking, or there was impulsivity going on, or there was restlessness and impatience? They were all ADHD, nearly all of them. I don't want to put, they were all amazing people. So ADHD is a subject that's totally misunderstood. I'll come back to that in perhaps a moment. So to get from identifying where the potential is, everybody's brain is different. Once I worked with these 50,000 people, is finding out what's physical stimulation together with what coordination is going to stress the very part of the cerebellum where more potential is needed. So the kind of physical activities we give are all about increasing the density of grey matter, all about increasing the connections, the grey matter in the relevant part of the cerebellum. Different parts of the cerebellum are responsible for different types of skill. There's some parts responsible for listening skills, some for visual skills, some for physical, so on. So we will find the parts where there's potential for more development, and we stimulate that part. And the expression is, what fires together wires together. So we make the cells in that part of the cerebellum fire together. A process that takes 10 minutes, twice a day, typically for 6 months. And that makes such a huge amount of difference, a real measurable difference.
So we had a bit of an internet hiccup here where your voice really slowed down and your video got really pixelated. So would you mind kind of redoing the last couple of minutes, because it's not really usable for the podcast, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Do you have any opportunity, a way to record on your end as well in case this issue continues?
Let me see. I can on Zoom. I don't know if I can on Skype. Can I?
There is a new capability to do that.
Yeah, I've got start recording. Yes, I have.
Okay. All right. So that would be just a safety net there, because.
I'll start recording now. It's recording. Starting recording. And where do you want me to go back to? I'm so sorry. Am I going on too long?
No. This is great. This is great. Yeah.
Right. So, I've got to tell you, you're being recorded now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So if you could pick up where you were talking about, so the cerebellum, and you're pointing the back, and the mind-body connection, and.
You asked me the question, so what is the process? Do you want me to take it up from there?
Sure.
So the process goes like this. We've all got totally different brains. Your brain is very different to mine, as is everybody's brain, totally unique. So the potential in everybody's brain is different. So the first thing we do is find that potential and identify the strengths and the possibilities in that brain. From that, we can work out exactly what type of sensory stimulation, together with what specific coordination activity, needs to be happening so that you're getting brain cells in the correct part of the cerebellum to fire together. Because what fires together eventually wires together. So we're providing effectively different types of sensory stimulation plus physical coordination activities. They're unique for every person. The duration, the level of sensory stimulation, the degree of stimulation varies, and we change that every day. And it's a process that takes you 10 minutes twice a day for typically 6 months. Very severe cases of autism and so on tend to take longer than that because they've got so many foundational layers to build up first. But the typical child that's struggling, or the adult that's wanting to sharpen up, between 3 and 6 months is normally enough. And those exercises develop every day, and they get more intense every day, and they go to different areas of the brain. And every month we repeat a neurological test, which gives us a graphical picture of exactly where that potential is growing, where there's more potential to focus on. So we're fine-tuning that process all the time for that 6 months that we work together. And people have graphs, they have charts, they keep their own anecdotal notes, and we do all that on the system so they can see the change neurologically, they can see the change practically in their life. And boy, is it thrilling. Every day I get messages from people, oh, you never told me this would happen, and that would happen, and this would happen. And I can't share with you just how exciting this is and how life-changing it is for so many people.
Wow. Is this based on some sort of like neurofeedback or something? Or what's this process like?
No, it's not neurofeedback. No, it's completely natural. There are times where we can actually see what we're doing being replicated in a baby. So when a baby is rolling over and tumbling and so on, they are actually giving their cerebellum very specific stimulations. In actual fact, many of the children that bypass most of their crawling phase end up with some learning issues in school. So, for instance, a child, typically a baby, will crawl between 9 and 12 or 9 and 13 months or thereabouts. Some children start walking around the furniture at 9 or 10 months and bypass the crawling phase, or they shuffle on their bottom rather than crawling. Well, crawling happens to be one of a large number of very deliberate processes that are critical to the normal and full development of the cerebellum. So often a child would be walking around the furniture at 10 months and the mum would be saying, oh, wow, isn't he or she so advanced? They're really doing really well and they're very excited. Then when they get to 6, 7 years of age and they're at school, hey, this child is struggling with reading a bit. What's going on? And some of those fundamental learning processes have been missed out. So what we're doing is we've had to work very hard at finding the ways of giving sensory stimulation in a coordinated way for the areas that the brain needs to develop this new circuitry. So it's all physical exercise, no drugs, not even any nutrients. right now. I'm not against nutrients; they're great and they're useful, but you don't need any drugs, nothing invasive. Don't need to go to any clinics, or you can just do these tests at home and start this whole process.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And what is the test like that tells you if your cerebellum or your child's cerebellum needs further development?
Well, when I started this, I sent one of my researchers off to a professor in America that has done a lot of work for NASA, because when astronauts leave the Earth's gravitational pull, they start to do strange things. Some of them start writing upside down and all sorts of things. So when I said to some of the experts, "Oh, these folk have got temporary dyslexia. We need to understand what's going on." They said, "Oh, no. At NASA, astronauts don't have dyslexia." Okay, fair enough. But the equipment was developed to find out what was happening in the balance mechanism when they leave the Earth's gravitational pull. Now, balance and coordination of our inner ear system, our vestibular system, is actually a critical part of our learning process. So many of the exercises involve stimulating the inner ear, the vestibular system. So when we're measuring, we're actually using measures that identify balance and coordination and visual input, auditory input, the speed of, the capacity of, the speed with which we can learn, all of these measures. And originally it was this equipment that was developed for NASA and some eye tracking equipment, which you see in specialized eye hospitals. We had all of that stuff. But this last few years, because of the advancing technology that's capable in PCs and tablets, we have now built it all into a PC or a tablet. So you can actually do it at home with equipment you've probably got sitting there, and it's very accurate, and it gives us a huge amount of relevant data. So the tests themselves look a bit like brain training games. They're simple, they're fun, they take about 25 minutes, and you get this graph at the end and a big long report saying, this is what happened, this is where your potential is, and this is the impact it will have on your life, and so on. So what was 15 years ago very complex neurological tests that you had to go to a clinic for, now it's all buried inside your PC. But just to be clear, I mentioned brain training games. Some people think that brain training has the same effect as we do. No, it doesn't. And there's one simple reason. Yes, we use it for assessment, but the actual development process only happens when you're stimulating the inner ear, the vestibular. So sitting at the computer playing brain training games, you might well be exercising the circuits you already have, but you will not be creating the new skill circuits that you'd love to have. So when you stimulate the vestibular, that's like creating plasticity in the brain. It's readying the brain to learn new things. And that's when we pile in with these coordination activities, stressing and stretching the brain in a way that you've not done before. And that's where the new circuits are coming in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that reminds me of, I learned from a brain expert, I forget who it was, if it was Dr. Amen or who was on the show, by the way. The Dr. Daniel Amen episode's amazing. But maybe it was him, maybe it was somebody else who said that you need to exercise through connecting up your right and left hemispheres of your body. Like if you touch your right knee to your left elbow or vice versa, that's a good exercise because it helps bridge those connections between the hemispheres of the brain. That sounds like it might be a related concept to what you were describing.
It is a related concept, and that is one particular connection. There's probably 1,000 connections like that need to be connected to create the automaticity for all of our basic skills that we need. Yeah, and I did 3 podcasts recently with Dr. Amen. It was a lot of fun. I was very humbled when he said at the beginning that he's been following my research for 15 to 20 years. I was kind of amazed. I look up to Dr. Amen and always will, because his skills in scanning and identifying brain issues is awesome. Yeah. So he's absolutely on the right wavelength, and we're talking quite frequently right now about what he's achieving with people and what we're achieving with creating blood flow in the cerebellum to a very, very remarkable extent.
Yeah, in fact, speaking of blood flow to different parts of the brain, that's something that Dr. Amen focuses on with the SPECT scan.
Exactly.
Yeah, with the SPECT scan, I actually went in and to the Amen clinics and got the SPECT scan. So did my wife. We're big biohackers. I mean, we try everything.
Yeah.
we just this year we did the 40 years of Zen neurofeedback thing from Dave Asprey's company.
Yeah.
We've done stem cell therapy. So last year we did the SPECT scans and QEEG. My wife Orion is now in the process of doing some more neurofeedback with Dr. Andrew Hill, who's also going to be on my show. So we're learning from all these great thought leaders and experts, and then we end up going and trying their stuff out. Like
right.
Yeah, Dr. Harry Adelson, the stem cell doctor of Dave Asprey, had him on my show, and then he was on Orion's show, and next thing you know, we're out in Park City, Utah, getting procedures done because why not?
Yeah, absolutely, and some of this stuff isn't reaching people, and that's the scary bit. And much of the health industry is a generation behind where it needs to be. So these people you're mentioning are sometimes a decade or two ahead. And how long is it going to take before it reaches conventional medicine? I dread to think.
Yeah, well, things are changing at a faster and faster clip because of the law of accelerating returns. That term coined by Ray Kurzweil, and the technologies, medical technologies, and longevity technologies, and brain performance technologies that are coming down the pike are going to be amazing, and we really should focus some of our energy as just regular humans to be in the know on this stuff. That's why one of the reasons why I have this podcast is so I can share all the cutting edge stuff that I'm learning at places like Genius Network and the Bulletproof Conference. And some of the intensives I'm at, various masterminds like Neil Strauss's Society and so forth. It's really amazing cutting edge stuff, and most people just have no clue. I didn't even have a clue what stem cell therapy was 2 years ago. It was my first Bulletproof conference that I went to, where I got to really understand what the opportunities were. Everybody should get stem cell therapy, I think.
So, absolutely. My amazing partner is pushing me down that track right now. But let me go to the longevity bit, because you just touched on that.
Yeah.
Sheffield University have recently published a study on working with me and my methods with people between the ages of 70 and 90. I asked them to design a study that would prove what we were achieving, and they said, let's do it with old people. I said, oh no, they've got decline. He said, well, all the better. So they only used 10% of my normal program. So they only used a few weeks of it. Normally it's 6 months. They used 10% of the program, and they showed in that research, it's peer reviewed and published now, that we're increasing balance, we're increasing memory, we're increasing confidence and reading skills in the elderly and folk that are facing decline. Now, that's remarkable enough in itself. But when you think that the kind of wiring we give people in the brain is the kind of wiring that you get, say, when you're learning to ride a bike. When you're learning to ride a bike, you're creating permanent wiring. I literally put my bike in the shed for 20 years when I discovered cars as a teenager. And it was 20 years later when I couldn't find my belt because my belly was expanding, and I decided I needed my bike out again. I pumped up the tires. Every one of the skills I had abandoned 20 years ago was still there. So when the cerebellum creates permanent wiring, and people think about learning in the brain as kind of to do with knowledge that you recall to your thinking brain. That's very, very different to the wiring of skills. So the wiring of skills is done by the amygdala. The wiring of skills is done by the cerebellum. So whether it's movement skills, whether it's cognitive processing skills, negotiation, or social skills, or whatever it is, the cerebellum is a bit like the quality control for the whole of the brain. It fine-tunes every process and makes it natural, makes us brilliant at it, makes it automatic, makes it effortless and consistent, or not. So that you can think of the cerebellum in various ways, but as the quality control agent, and this is all stuff I get from Professor Schlarman at Harvard. When you think of it in that context, creating permanent wiring, it's life-changing. It's not like things we learn from a book. It's stuff that happens in our brain that makes a difference to decades of our life, right until we go into cognitive decline in our dotage. So that research is published, and it was done by Professor Nicholson. And it's really worth a read, especially if any of your listeners are 65, 70 plus and thinking, how do I keep this stuff going? Here's an anti-aging process in the brain that is proven to be effective, and it's lasting as well. And it's something that everybody should do.
So it's like a 10-minute exercise process once a day that you do, and you just follow some protocol that you've developed?
Yeah, we deliver all of the activities on your smartphone. It comes up on a smartphone or a tablet or a PC, whatever you want, and it gives you the activities. It shows you on an avatar what you should be doing. You give feedback, and it adjusts your protocol every day. So you're told exactly what to do. It's 10 minutes, twice a day if you can, once a day if you can't. And every month we give you a lot of neurological feedback about exactly what is happening. So we've got old people, we've got kids, we've got folk in midlife, and we've also got athletes. We've also got there's quite a famous American athlete doing it right now, and I know he's going to go public with it when he's finished it. And so we've had a world champion recently, and a couple of national champions doing this because it's so easy to increase the precision of all of your cognitive and physical skills. So I'm sitting here excited, like I'm like a mosquito on a nudist beach. I just don't know where to take this next. There's so much to go at, but in my heart, I want to reach kids. If there's any families listening that have got kids that are struggling, they need not be struggling. So let's get them on this process. Let's get them on a journey that gets rid of their struggles, because when you develop the brain, the automaticity increases, the struggles go.
Yeah. So there's so many ways that this underdeveloped cerebellum can manifest itself in various issues, such as dyslexia and autism and ADHD and dementia in later life as well, right?
Absolutely.
So I just read an interesting study that there's this neck scan that you can do that will spot dementia 10 years earlier, according to scientists. There's an article on CNN about it. It takes 5 minutes to do this neck scan, and it looks for abnormal blood flow. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't studied it yet, but let me tell you one of the things that I kind of irritates me a little bit about academia. The large majority of academics want to understand everything. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a dad of a daughter that was struggling. I don't want more understanding. I want more solutions. I want something that changes it. So I keep on coming across research now explaining more about the issues with learning difficulties, with autism, and what is confidence and what is depression and so on. I'm not interested in that. I want to work hard at finding solutions for people to take their quality of life to a higher level. Let's take autism. There is so much argument about autism, about what caused it and whose fault it is. And so, I'm not interested. What I know is there's huge numbers of children out there who are struggling. And if you analyze what they're struggling with incompletely developed skills, be it social skills or reading skills or movement and coordination skills or whatever. All of the things that are limiting their quality of life, Stefan, are skill development. And guess where the answer to that lies? In the cerebellum. So I don't promise to cure anybody, but what I do is I tell them, we're going to transform the skills in your child and take their quality of life to a different level. So I am not going to join this big army of people who are losing their minds worrying about what caused it and whose fault it is. I'm going to focus on helping the kids. And if I can take any child that's got limited skills, and if any parents listening now, analyze what it is that's really holding your child back and write it down. Think of it in terms of what are the skills your child hasn't got. And it might be sensitivity, it might be eye tracking for reading. It might be auditory processing to give listening and retention. And, by the way, when you've got incompletely developed skills, your working memory is full. And that does a few things. That stops control of your focus. So you tend to be impulsive and all sorts of things go wrong. And when your working memory is full, you lose control of your emotions. You get frustrated, you get irritated, you get anxious. And it tends towards depression. So all of these things go wrong as a direct consequence. So by transforming skills, you transform emotional controls. And the consequence of that, as you can imagine, is huge. So I don't tend to read all of the new analysis that comes out about what is causing this and how do we understand that. I'm focusing all of my team on how do we solve these problems? How do we get people to a better life, a longer life? Maintaining getting the skills they never had and keeping the skills they have throughout a longer period of life.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so you mentioned eye tracking several times.
Yeah.
How does that tie in to the cerebellum and difficulties with reading and learning?
That's a good question, Stefan, and some parents listening will probably get a bit angry with the authorities. They've not been told this before, but well over 90% of the children that struggle with reading, their problem is inaccurate eye tracking skills. Sometimes it's so bad you can actually watch them. So if a parent holds the head firmly so the head doesn't move and moves their finger from side to side in front of the child's eyes, watch what happens with the child's eyes very carefully. Very often their eye tracking is so poor, you can see it jumping. And if it jumps, that makes reading impossible. It makes it a nightmare. They can have all the brain intelligence you like, but poor eye tracking will stop them reading easily. In fact, reading will be very hard work. And what's happened is the thinking brain becomes full of the process of trying to move their eyes. So A, it's inaccurate. B, it's filling up the very space where they retain the information when they have read. So that's full. So they end up reading it. They work hard to read it. And then when they've read it, they've lost it because the working brain gets filled again by their eye tracking processing. So it's a horrible, horrible state. These kids really need understanding. So eye tracking is a skill. It's either developed or not by the cerebellum. And if it's not developed, working memory is full, reading is hard, comprehension is even worse, and it's something that's pretty easily solved, and that infuriates me. The whole world has gone nuts about phonics and all sorts of techniques that helps them cope with a symptom instead of looking for the root cause. Deal with the root cause and that symptom goes away.
So what would be the solution then? It's just the 10-minute exercises twice a day. That's the only thing you need to do to fix the eye tracking, or is there something else?
Well, that's the program I've developed, is 10 minutes twice a day. But if folk want to read my book, they're very welcome to. They can download it. It's on Amazon. Stop Struggling in School. And in there, I actually give links to some free exercises you can download from the internet. And that's absolutely better than nothing. If you want the Pucker program to find all the potential in your child, then I show you how to get access to my program in there. But there's free eye exercises on there. There's balance exercises, which are really good. People should use balance boards for their children and get them doing any exercise that involves movement, stimulation of their vestibular system. Get them off computers, because computers is not going to help their cerebellum develop. Get them climbing outside and take them on adventure walks. Get them doing physical activity. That is going to be so much more helpful. And if they've got serious issues, then consider my program. It's they can find all that details in my book.
There's an eye exercise I just learned about from Dr. Lieberman, who was on my show, Yeah, great guy. And it's this string that has little balls of different colors. So it's a string that has little balls, and you're supposed to focus your eyes on the different balls. What's that called again?
I've seen it, not for some time, but yes, it's a very good principle. It's very good at focusing the eyes, and it's very good at, especially when you get beyond 40, it's very good at maintaining the flexibility of the muscles in the eyes to keep so you don't end up becoming long-sighted and need reading glasses like I do.
Right. So I just found it. It's by my desk here. It's called a Brock string.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and here's what it looks like for those who are watching on video. It's a little tangled, but you just exercise your eyes and the muscles in your eyes by focusing on the different balls, and it's just it's a really cool exercise.
Well, there's something that Dr. Lieberman probably didn't tell you. That's great for exercising your eye muscles within the iris of the eye. But if you want to exercise your eye tracking, you need to hold that string out in both hands and keep your head still and focus on different balls one at a time for 5 seconds, back and forth. That's a totally different skill with the same tool, and that will improve your eye tracking and give you more flexibility. You'll find reading easier if you have any struggles at all with reading.
Oh, that's a great tip. That is a great tip. I actually learned I had issues with reading. I love to read, but I get so tired when I read for any length of time. So I rarely finish a book. I just get it just exhausts me. Not like I just get tired and fall asleep is what it is. And so I was talking to Dr. Helen Erlin about this, who was one of the speakers at the Bulletproof conference, and she said, well, you probably have Erlin syndrome, and like 1 out of 3 people, or 1 out of every two or something like that, like 33 to 50% of all of us have Erlin syndrome, where we either get tired as we read, or it's hard to focus, or the letters kind of move on the page as we're reading and so forth. So there's an assessment that you take, and both I have Erlin syndrome and my wife does. So we have Erlin glasses now. Here are my Erlin glasses. I have a version of these that are for the computer that don't have correction, because I'm a little bit nearsighted even after my LASIK surgery. So I don't need reading glasses yet. So I have a pair of Erlin glasses for the computer without any prescription, and then I've got a prescription for when I'm driving. Oh, you got some glasses there too. Are those Erlin glasses, or are those bulletproof, like the True Darks, or what are those? Those are really interesting.
They're pinhole glasses. Now, these are another way of correcting the muscles in your eye. You can buy them for about $6 or $8 on Amazon, and you wear them for 10 or 15 minutes a day, and it also strengthens. And you can read with these. They're plastic with little holes in. There's no glass in them, and they force your muscles to work harder, and they exercise your muscles. So give them a try. That will deal with your reading stuff. But let me just get back to this root cause issue and the Erlin lenses. I don't knock anybody else's theories, because all these people are doing good for a lot of people. But the root cause of getting tired with reading is almost invariably poor eye tracking. If you correct that at the cerebellum, you'll find reading gets a lot easier, because at the moment your working memory, Stefan, is controlling your eye movements. What you do in your working memory rather than in the cortex of your brain is at least 40,000 times slower and harder. So you imagine when you learn to ride a bike. When you were learning to ride a bike, you knew what to do, you were thinking about it, but your processing was so slow thinking that you fall off. It's only when the processing has become automatized by the cerebellum and it gets hardwired, that you take the processing out of your thinking brain up into the cortex. It's fully automatic. You don't have to think, and you don't fall off. Well, for you and about 1 in 4 people, eye tracking never becomes fully automatized. So your thinking brain is always involved with moving your eyes. Now, when you were younger, certainly, and maybe even now, you might even hold your pen in a slightly unusual way, because what controls your eyes also controls your fingertips. Fine motor skills, same part of the brain, controls eye movement and controls fingertips. So people that have poor eye tracking, very often you'll find they're using their whole hand when they're writing, rather than just writing with the tips of their fingers. Both are fine motor controls. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. Wow, that's fascinating. And is this eye tracking issue something that can be diagnosed just over a computer program like yours, or do you ideally need to go in to see a specialist and get looked at?
We deal with the cerebellum. When you deal with the root cause, you're dealing with the fundamental reason why important, critical skills have never finished their development. So we don't have to work on every individual skill. We work on the electrician. We work on the cerebellum. And if you have got an eye tracking issue, then certainly 90% of people with eye tracking issues get them resolved when you focus on the cerebellum. Because the cerebellum then looks for any skills you're using and say, oh, I can improve this program. And it is like a computer program in the brain. It improves the program. It's the quality control. And when it's developed, it makes every skill far more automatic, far more consistent, far more precise, and far more effortless. So at the moment, you're getting tired because your thinking brain is having to work very, very hard controlling your eyes to put them in the right place. So I wouldn't be surprised if your eyes might even water at times if you force yourself to read for too long. And certainly there'll be times when occasionally you have to reread a sentence because you're beginning to get tired and you couldn't take it in because your thinking brain is full of controlling your eyes rather than having that space available to retain the information you're reading.
Wow.
And the brighter you are, the more likely this is to happen. So this whole theory about children who can't read being less intelligent is totally the opposite of the truth. I see far more children with above average underlying intelligence having struggles with eye tracking than I do children that are average intelligence. So there's another myth we've got to get rid of.
Wow. Okay. So are you doing these exercises yourself to keep your cerebellum in top shape?
I have done them all, and I got some benefit. My desk is a lot tidier now, but now it's my 70th birthday coming up next, and so I'm going to...
Oh, you do not look like you're 70. That's
I know,
amazing.
but I want to keep my brain sharp, so I'm going to do it again. The latest program we brought out a couple of years ago is even better than before, and we've been at cutting edge for 20 years, 19 years now. And every program we bring out is based upon all that we've learned this last few years and all the research that's come out. So I'm going to do it again because I've got a big job to do. I want to reach at least 1 million kids in the next 3 years, Stefan. And to do that, I've got to be sharp. I've got to make some good decisions. I've got to communicate clearly. And I'm 8 out of 10 at the moment, and I've got to get to 10 out of 10.
Wow. That's a great goal. And, the longer your time horizon, the longer you're going to live. So I know Dan Sullivan wants to live to, I think, 150. Nick Delgado, who's been on my show, Dr. Delgado wants to live to 180. Dave Asprey, who's been on my show, he wants to live to, I think, was it 100 and it's 100 and something. It's a significant milestone, longer than anyone has ever lived so far. So yeah, it's exciting times, and the longer your time horizon and the bigger your goals and the more active you are as you age, the younger you keep your brain and your whole biology, I would say.
Well, I haven't set a target like all of those. All I know is my brain is the most important organ in my body. and I'm going to keep it as fresh and as young as I possibly can. I can still work 12, 14-hour days if I want, and I do, and my sharpness stays reasonably good for that time, but I need even more, because my objective is actually not my own age. My objective is I want to bring everything I've learnt from these neuroscientists, this jigsaw puzzle I've pieced together of how to improve quality of life. I want to get it to the people that are written off. You and I are having a good life, but there's an awful lot of kids and adults out there who are struggling, underachieving, can't read, can't concentrate, can't write, can't learn, struggling with social skills and so on. Some of them labeled, some of them not. I want to reach as many of those as possible and give them a life. So when I've done that, I will have fulfilled my objective, and then I might start thinking about living to 200 or something crazy. I'm not thinking about that. Like, my next objective is, let's transform 1 million kids. Let's collect the research data. Let's start influencing government policy on health and education to bring this amazing breakthrough to the 20 or 25% of our population who's dreadfully underachieving right now. Many of them illiterate, many of them only partly illiterate. And, we were in a conference last weekend, or whenever it was recently, when we saw so many, nearly all of whom had underachieved at school, go on to have a great life and be hugely successful financially. But for every one of those, there was another 10,000 struggling. The solution for all of those to have a better life is to develop the cerebellum, to find that $1 billion worth that's sitting there as hidden potential between their ears.
So how do our listeners help you with that wonderful mission of yours of reaching these 1 million kids? It's a good start for them to work with their family, their children, and maybe children that are in their neighborhood or in their school or community. But what about those 1 million kids that you want to reach? How do we help you?
Thank you. I need the help, and I would love that. So if they want to contact me, I can happily give you my email address, and they can look at my website. My website is withzing.com, withzing.com, and they'll find more information on there and some more research. And if anybody's got a great idea about how we can get to the influences in government, my email address is my first name, Wynford, with a Y, WYNFORD, at withzing, WITHZING.com. I'd love to hear from them. And, I've got some amazing coaches who've worked with me for a long time, specializing in helping kids, specializing in helping athletes, specializing in helping people of all ages, and I can put them in touch so they can talk to people who've gone through the program. This to me is my new life purpose, the one that got switched on as I was driving to find out if my daughter was going to live.
Wow. All right, so let's switch to a lightning round for the last 5 or so minutes of our episode. I have a bunch of questions that I just want to bang out here and get your take on.
Yeah.
Montessori versus Waldorf/Steiner. What's your take on those two approaches to teaching kids?
Look, they're all on the right wavelength. They're all, and very often it's not which, it's who can I get my child to. Some people would have to move to get to any one of those three. So if you've got a child at any one of those three, the chances are they're going to do better. They're going to find more potential, because they do a lot of movement and balance. Some of them do a lot of movement and balance, which is really intelligent. Now, they're based upon, of course, all of the science that was there before what we now know about the cerebellum. So I would love to help those organizations update it, but believe me, they're all going to do better than the government-funded education system.
Yeah, that's certain. I actually had my kids go through Waldorf schools for a bit of time. Yeah, when we moved out of the area where they didn't have Waldorf, they didn't continue it, but it was a great enhancement to their learning to have that different style. What would you say, like if you could look at a a super learner or somebody who is super advanced, what are some of the things that they're doing as far as discipline? You know, there's all this focus on the cerebellum that we covered. But
Yeah.
Beyond that, what would you say are some attributes, or some best practices, or habits of super learners? And I would just couch this by saying that I had a super learner, Jonathan Levy, on this show just recently, and that was an amazing episode. And if you're interested, listeners, in improving your memory or in improving your learning skills and capabilities, it was a great episode.
Well, some folk are natural super learners and some work hard at it. You know, there are things that we do, or some people do, to mindfulness and meditation is a very good process, because whatever we want to retain has to go into our thinking brain first, in our prefrontal cortex. Now, if that's full of stuff that shouldn't be there, we can't retain much. Most of our long-term learning takes place overnight, so it's what we retain in our thinking brain parked away there that gets transferred very nicely overnight into our long-term memory. That's a great way of learning. So the freer we have our working memory, the better that is. So folk that pursue meditation, they're going to find that they retain more and therefore can recall more simply because of that. The process I like to use is the development of the cerebellum, because that also empties in a natural and a lasting way the thinking brain, takes out of it all sorts of stuff that shouldn't be there. So that's the only contribution I can make to improving fundamental learning and memory recall skills. But can I just jump back? There's one thing I should have said about the schools you mentioned. Any school methodology that encourages children to maintain their creativity, their natural ability to innovate, any school that does that has got to be great. Because so many schools, so many of the state schools and the government-funded schools, all they focus on is getting good reports and getting children to the highest results, most of which is based upon knowledge. We don't need so much knowledge. In my phone here, I've got Wikipedia, and it's got all the knowledge I'll ever need. I can look it up in a second at any time. Schools should be changing dramatically to teach more of the fundamentals about negotiation and relationships and team building and leadership and all of that sort of stuff. And, oops, I apologize for that. Sorry, that was a doctor from America, a famous doctor from America who...
Oh, you could answer that.
So let me just redo that bit.
Yeah.
I should say about the schools, a point I should have made is that some schools go to I should have said about schools that some schools go to great lengths to maintain creativity in children, and that is critical. It makes a huge difference to the whole of their lives. Schools should be focusing on relationships and negotiation and team building and leadership and all of these other skills, rather than all their time on let's get these children to the highest possible marks in knowledge retained. And so the schools you mentioned, they're pretty good, you know. And if anybody hasn't watched that Ken Robinson, Sir Ken Robinson video on TED Talks on innovation and creativity in schools, they must. It's an absolute classic. So congratulations to those schools, because they are doing more than that than the average.
Yeah, great point. And I'll include the video embed in the episode show notes for this show. My final question is around the amygdala. And what does that role? What role does that part of the brain play in? Because a lot of people will have PTSD from traumatic events, and or even just witnessing traumatic events. You know, you watch enough horrific stuff on TV that goes into your amygdala, and that really wreaks a lot of havoc. And I'd love your thought on amygdala and the health of the amygdala.
Okay, I love that question. Thank you. we've talked a lot about the cerebellum. Cerebellum is one of three important ways of remembering, of learning in the brain. The cerebellum remembers, learns skills and perfects them. And that deals with all of the things that we don't think about, that we do automatically. It's the cerebellum that creates those. The hippocampus is the bit of the brain that remembers, that indexes, that behaves like a librarian for all of those things we recall to our thinking brain, all of our memories, all of the pictures, the events, the dates, the times, the facts. They're all stored by the hippocampus. The amygdala is a very special bit. And the amygdala is the bit that connects events with emotions that we are feeling at the time. So the amygdala doesn't remember in words. The amygdala remembers the type of emotion, whether it's positive or negative, and the event, the situation, all of the aspects of the situation. And this is another actually exciting podcast, which perhaps we should do sometime. But in brief, PTSD is caused by some serious traumatic event. And very often, of course, it's the negative that's the strongest emotions. The fear, the pain that we're facing will burn in serious connections. Now, PTSD often can happen at any time in life, but children that go through traumas, children that are abused physically, mentally, psychologically, sexually, especially at some critical ages, but at any age in childhood, 3 to 5 is a critical age, puberty is another critical age, but at any time, those formative years, any situation where a child is feeling threatened, not safe, not loved, abandoned, misunderstood, and I look back with guilt and pain. I misunderstood my own daughter that couldn't read. I thought she wasn't trying hard enough. I thought she was maybe a bit lazy, and others did too. I was wrong. That caused her trauma. So any trauma gets associated by the amygdala, the situation around it, the people, the smells, even the colors and so on can get associated with that strong emotion that they were experiencing at the time. And at any time in life, when any one of those aspects of the situation occurs again, the amygdala says, hey, there's a warning, go into fight or flight, be prepared, your life is under threat. And you go into this fight or flight, which can cause panic attacks, it can cause serious anxiety. It causes a complete change in character because the amygdala switches off the logical brain and transfers control to the reptilian brain, where you're just in fight or flight. There's no point then saying to someone that's in that situation, oh, pull yourself together. They haven't got an option. There's no point in saying there's no real danger. They're not responding to that. They're out of that. So understanding them is huge. So the amygdala is incredibly powerful. It was intended to save us when we'd got tigers and snakes and wild animals chasing us and so on, thousands of years ago. Today we don't have those level of threats because we're a bit more sophisticated. But the mechanism is still there to protect us. It's just that nearly all the time now they are false alarms caused by these subconscious, not in words, the subconscious connections with the previous situation that force that strong amygdala memory between an event, situation, and the emotions being felt. So perhaps I should make clear that developing the cerebellum doesn't resolve those issues. So it won't take them away. And that's something I'm actually working research on right now. But what we do by increasing working memory capacity, we give more emotional control. So we take people further away from those amygdala memories that cause them so much harm. But that's a whole new topic. It's an exciting topic. It's one that's so misunderstood by people.
Well, Wynford, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your journey, your insights with us, and I'm excited to try out your program. I'm excited to go through that and share the results with our listeners. So if we can send our listeners to a particular website, that's going to be withzing.com.
Correct.
And if they wanted to contact you directly to help you with your mission,
I would love that.
Yeah.
I need help, advice, ideas, connections with people that would benefit.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you, listeners. Now it's time to take some action from what you've learned. This isn't about just passively sitting back and listening to the episode and getting entertained. This is about applying this stuff in your life and the lives of people you love. This is Stephan Spencer, your host, signing off. We'll catch you on the next episode of The Optimized Geek.